Now, sometimes a band comes along and just nails it with their first album. The songs are great, the musicianship is superb, and they're a product of their times. And in this episode, we're going to talk about one of those bands. Now, the germination of this band started in the early 60s up in San Francisco, where a bunch of musicians were just hanging out together. And then some of those musicians decided, hey, they're going to form a band. And so they do. And they call the band the Grateful Dead. Now, the Dead are going to go out on tour, but they don't like the idea of having a different opening act start for them all the time. So they decide they're going to have the same act and it will tour with them. And in fact, 3 members of the Dead will play with this new act for their opening. And then when they're finished, those 3 members of the Dead will stay on stage, the rest of the Dead will come out and they'll do a Grateful Dead set. You think you know who this band is? They are a psychedelic country rock band. Have I got you interested? Well, then let's take a ride on the Glendale train and find out more about the New Riders of the Purple Sage. Let's drop the needle. The New Riders of the Purple Sage got their start with those informal jam sessions up in Menlo Park, California, where you had Jerry Garcia, David Nelson, and John Dawson all playing together. Now, John Dawson was a big fan of Bakersfield country music, and he thought that needed to get incorporated into whatever music these guys were going to play. But in the meantime, Jerry Garcia decides he's going to form the Grateful Dead. And David Nelson goes off to join a band called the New Delhi River Band. And John Dawson drifts down to Los Angeles. But then the Dead start work on an album. And it's an album I'm going to try to pronounce for you. It's kind of difficult. It's A Oxo Oma Oxoea, or something like that. And as they're recording the album, David Nelson is working with the Dead. And guess what? John Dawson has drifted back up from LA and joins them in the studio. After a little while, John Dawson starts to write songs, and they are incorporating that country music feel that he really likes. And Jerry Garcia is just teaching himself how to play pedal steel guitar. So he and Dawson become even closer friends as they start working on Dawson's new song. Garcia and Dawson started playing these new songs around coffee houses when the Dead weren't on tour. Then they decided they'd recruit David Nelson to play lead guitar. And then Garcia brought in Mickey Hart on drums and Phil Lesh from the Dead on bass. This grouping then becomes that de facto opening act for the Dead when they're on tour. In 1971, they released their first album. It's called New Riders of the Purple Sage. And the band includes not only Nelson and Garcia and Dawson, but also Dave Tolbert on bass and Spencer Dryden of the Jefferson Airplane on drums. All the songs in this album were written by John Dawson and sung by him, and his plaintive way of singing, coupled with Garcia's immaculate steel guitar playing, makes this album just soar. And it is one of my favorite albums of all time, and certainly my favorite New Riders of the Purple Sage album. Now, usually I'll kind of guide you to 1 or 2 songs on the album, but I can't do this on this record. I like every cut. So here is the track listing of this incredible album. I Don't Know You, What You Gonna Do, Portland Woman, Henry, Dirty Business, Glendale Train, Garden of Eden, All I Ever Wanted, Last Lonely Eagle, and Louisiana Lady. This album did pretty well and hit number 39 on the charts, but Jerry Garcia was pretty busy with the Dead, and he couldn't devote much time and energy to the New Riders of the Purple Sage moving forward. They had to find a new pedal steel guitarist. So they got Buddy Gage. In 1972, they released their second album, Power Glide, and this one does much better than the first album, but like I said, I like the first album better. On this album, John Dawson does not write all of the songs, and they cover other people's songs as well. Standouts are all the Dawson songs: Rainbow, Sweet Lovin' One, Lochinvar, and Running Back to You. And they do a good job with Hello Mary Lou and Willie and the Hand Jive. Now, that same year, they released their third album called Gypsy Cowboy, and on this record, the songs are divided between John Dawson and Dave Tolbert. The lead-off title track is The Great Gypsy Cowboy, and then there's Whiskey, Groupie, Sutter's Mill, and the not-so-cheerful Death and Destruction. In 1973, they released the album that most people associate with the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and it's called The Adventures of Panama Red, and clearly establishes the band as fans of marijuana. John Dawson only writes 2 songs on this record. One song, Kick in the Head, was written by the Grateful Dead lyricist Robert Hunter. Other good songs are Panama Red, One Too Many Stories, You Should Have Seen Me Running, and Cement, Clay, and Glass. This marked the high water point for the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and through the 70s and the 80s, they continued to record, but nothing really caught on. And then in 1982, most of the original band members had left, leaving only John Dawson, who got a new group that he put together, calling them the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and they actually toured and recorded for 15 years. In 1997, they broke up, and John Dawson left the music business, moved to Mexico, and became a teacher. Sadly, John Dawson died at the age of 64 in Mexico. In 2005, David Nelson and Buddy Gage got together and formed a new version of the band that they continue to tour with today. But my best memories of this band are from 1971 through 73. And of course, that debut album of theirs, which is just spectacular. And I know that anytime I go back to the record collection here and pull it out and put it on the turntable, it's going to get my toe tapping and put a smile on my face. So take a listen to Portland Woman or to Louisiana Lady. It'll make you want to move to Portland or Louisiana. Now, I'm going to try something, hopefully, that will work. I'm going to make a playlist on Spotify and label it Bernie Drops the Needle, episode whatever number this is, and New Riders of the Purple Sage. And you should be able then to go over to Spotify and listen to any or all of these songs that I talk about in this episode. If this works, it'll be so cool because you know I've waited 137 episodes to be able to play the music for you. So here is the link. I'll also try to put it in the comments. See if you can cut and paste it, go to Spotify, and rock on with the music. Thanks for watching, and keep a rockin'. If you like this episode, hit the like button, and you can also leave me a comment down below, and I'll respond to you. If you subscribe, we'll let you know when future episodes come out.